Hi, everyone. Uh, I'm Lloyd Schwartz, and I am following a noble tradition that is now in its second week, uh, introducing the person who is going to introduce the poet who will be reading tonight. And before I say anything about that person, I'm just want to welcome everyone. I want to very much thank the Grolier for continuing this extraordinary series of poetry readings, and the Menkidi family, Carol Menkidi, who is here tonight, and James Fraser, who has been running the Grolier beautifully. And what a wonderful place this is to be and to hear extraordinary people read their work. So I just want to say a few words about Gail Mazur, who will be introducing Robert Pinsky. Gail is one of our great poetry citizens. And as the founder of the Blacksmith House Poetry Series, uh, as a teacher at Emerson and Boston University, uh, and um, and anyone who heard the reading that Robert Pinsky introduced Gail doing last week also knows what an extraordinary poet she is. So I now give you Gail Mazur.
Oh, are you going to sit in my seat?
No, I'm going to crawl behind.
Boy, it's tall. It's really a joy to be here, to be able to thank the Grolier for continuing its work. Who would have guessed that it could thrive like this in the middle of everything? Anyway, thank you all for coming. And I'm delighted to introduce Robert, who introduced me in such a delightful way that I'm cowed. So I had to write something. Also, the Proverbs of Limbo, Robert's new book, is his first book of poems, although he's very productive in every way. In what, 11 years, I think?
Not many, but a lot.
Oh,
Whatever.
193 years. 9 years? 7 years? Amazing that he brings out a book every year. So, and like Robert, his poems contain multitudes. And this book particularly boggles the mind. There are homages to Ralph Branca. Does everybody know who Ralph Branca was? Baseball. Heard of it? Baseball? You can look him up. James Russell Lowell and Emerson. To Robert's friends lost and remembered, like his heroes from baseball's great eras. They might surprise us, readers, with their return appearances. There's a poem that roams Mount Auburn Cemetery with nods to Baranchik and Mike Mazur, among others. But who'd expect Adam Zagajewski and Jerry Lewis to get together on a page? I love his tender, funny engagement with his cat Bobo, who's invented again getting Robert's office copier going so he can bat each page as it billows out to the floor. Robert's really engaged by this activity. I think he's really proud of this cat. As a matter of fact, I would believe from his poetry that he and Bobo often philosophize together. But he's an utterly profound poet, seriously, witty as he is, writing from a sensibility that embraces tragedy and absurdity of our particularly peculiar American world. He is also, in our sometimes mean poetry world, generosity itself. I'm so happy to introduce him and to hear him read from this long-awaited, it seems longer to me than it was, I guess, poetry collection, Proverbs of Limbo. Please welcome Robert Pinsky.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you, Gail and Lloyd. The expression is among friends, and it's part of the meaning of this historic, warm-hearted store for me. And I'll add another friend. Ifeanyi Menkidi and I made friends when we were still in our 20s. We were puppy, eager poets together. Gail could have added Ifeanyi as one of the names of people that I mention in this book, which is full of names of friends and of people I admire. Ifeanyi was very much both. And the people James has made available to watch and hear what's going on here virtually should appreciate Ifeanyi as a poet, as a thinker, and as having given this gift to us all and to people who are probably not just in their teens, but in primary school now. So thank you very much, Gail. Thank you very much, Lloyd. Thank you very much, Ifeanyi. I will read mainly from this book, Proverbs of Limbo. I'll read the first 4 or 5 poems in it, and then I'll sort of see what happens. I then might read, I've actually been writing recently, so I might read a recent poem or two, and I might go back and read something old, but it's a good, simple plan. I'll just start in the first poem in this book, and I'll start reading it to you. Poem of Names. The bad rain fell on Osamu Shimomura. On the walk home, it turned his white shirt black. Quote, and my grandmother got me quickly into a bath. It likely saved me from death by radiation. End quote. Tuvalu's Ernst Borinsky would not discuss his family killed by Nazis. Quote, an area I have liquidated for my mental health. End quote. Borinsky's grave at Tuvalu, a kind of shrine. Salma begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, the underground river of historic passion and retrenchment. Thank you, Elliot, Simon, and Hazel, for wanting to talk with me about my dying someday. Your dog, Bucky, had been so cold when you touched his body. A compliment for me, that conversation. It almost doesn't matter what we said. I thought of Milford, your great-grandpa. That time I asked him, Did he believe in life after death? Quote, I guess that you are my life after death, he said. A boy named Christian at a Q&A in Texas asked me, the visiting poet, quote, what motivates you? What gets you out of bed each day? End quote. Good question. The pride of Ernst Borinsky of Mississippi. The shame of Nathan Forrest of Pillow Hill. Willie Lee Rose, historian of Reconstruction. Congressman Peter Rodino, called Pete. It's the dead people that motivate me, Christian. Dorothy Pinsky Wright. William Butler Yeats. As to your name, I remember Don Polk, my friend, saying, quote, a lot of Jewish people think they're white, but no, they're not, end quote. In some ways, Yeats was a jerk. Arphaxad begat Salah. Salah begat Eber. Oh yeah, said Ruby to Don Polk. Well, most Black people don't know they're goyim. End quote. Somebody said about Pete Rodina and Judge Sirica, quote, the night school guys are saving the country, end quote. Borinsky needed a job, but no white school would offer him a position. Tougaloo did. At his famous forums there, he asked his students to sit one chair apart, so the white kids from Millsaps sat among them. Pete Seeger, Ralph Bunch, Joan Baez at the forums, Rodino at the House, impeaching Nixon. Pellegrino means pilgrim. Shimomura discovered cells that made a jellyfish glow. He garnered 1 million samples in Puget Sound. A protein in Aquaria victoria, embedded to glimmer in other life, transformed the study of living things. Years later, the Exxon Valdez oil spill left nearly all of those Aquaria dead. A poisoning that Shimomura indicted, he whose grandma had washed away the ashes. I don't know if any writer benefits as much as I do from the invention of search engines. No allusions are obscure anymore. Guy's sleeping, you should wake him up. Oh, his eyes are closed, he's not sleeping. Next poem in the book is called, it was probably just ecstasy, I misunderstood it. Branca. Ralph Branca was the 15th of 17 children. This poem is not the poem of the speaker. His father was an immigrant from Calabria. These words are those of Robert Pinsky, speaking. Branca wore Dodger uniform number 13. Speaking is the punchline of a Jewish joke. Some Romans called Calabrians Africani. Brooklyn had its own daily, the Brooklyn Eagle. At 85, Branca learned about his mother. He was 21 when Robinson joined the Dodgers. At 11, I loved Robinson for his daring, running the bases, stealing home, his fire. Branca was one of the few who befriended him. I was too young to understand his mission, the fuel of his dancing to taunt the pitcher. Robinson never forgot Branca's kindness. What the old man found out about his mother is she was born a Jew in Hungary, Kati. After he gave up the most famous home run ever back in the clubhouse, Branca lay weeping, face down. Kati gave birth to 17 Catholic children. The Giants won the pennant, 1951. Branca means claw, a fit name for a pitcher. His teammates thought it best that he cry alone. But, quote, only my dear friend, Jackie, who knew me so well, came over and put his arm around my shoulder, end quote. The Nazis killed the aunts and uncles Branca didn't know existed until he was old. 42 in itself, a nothing of a number. The Dodgers traded Branca to the Tigers. Grief, with its countless different ways and strains. Glory, a greater thing than success, but slower. Some of the Tigers who had been Giants explained to Branca how the Giants had stolen the signs from opposition catchers. The telescope in center field, wires, buzzers. Branca chose not to talk about it. It's all in Prager's book. Prager's research unearthed Kati, those aunts and uncles. The Dodgers were taken from Brooklyn by their owner. I, Robert Pinsky, choose not to say his name. I didn't live in Brooklyn, but I knew the score. I knew it was a kind of underdog place. Nowadays, once a year, all major leaguers wear Jackie Robinson's number, 42. Big deal. In the joke, the person who answers the telephone at Goldberg, and Goldberg keeps replying that Goldberg is out of the office. And so is Goldberg. All right, then, let me talk to Goldberg. Speaking. Robinson spoke to Branca. Without you, he said, we never could have made it this far. At Mount Auburn Cemetery. Walking among the graves for exercise, where do you get your ideas? How do I stop them? Looking for Mike Mazur's marker, I looked down at the grass and saw Stanislav Baranchak, our Solidarity poetry reading in Poznan. Years later, Stanislav in Newton saying, I'm a US liberal now with a car like everybody else. When I held Bobo dying in my arms, his green eyes told me, I am not done yet. Then he was gone. When he was young, he enjoyed leaping up onto the copy machine to press a button and hear it hum to life and rustle a blank page, and then another out onto its tray. Sometimes he batted the pages down to the floor. I used to call it his hobby. Here's a marble wicker bassinet. Here's a marble wicker bassinet marking a baby's grave to sever the good fellowship of dust. The vet's needle, first a sedative, then death. Now Willie paces the house, mouthing his elegy for Bobo. They never meow to one another, just to people or to their nursing mother when they're small. I marvel at this massive labeled American elm spreading out above a cluster of newer names. Chang, Oenesian, Kundakis, joining Howells Emerson, Shaw. And here's a 6-foot sphere of polished granite, perfect, and inscribed Walker. Should I have let him die his own cat way? The cemetery official confided Bruce Lee spends less money on a stone than Schwarzenegger. What will mark the markers when, like mourners, they bow and kneel and fall down flat to kiss the heaps they have in trust under the splendid elm, also marked with its tag, a noble survivor? Civilization lifted my cat from the street, gave him a name, his shots, and managed his death. Now Willie howls the loss from room to room. When people say, I'm ashamed of being German, said Arendt, I want to say, I'm ashamed of being human. Sometimes when Bobo made his copies of nothing, I'd crumple one for him to chase and combat in the game of being himself. It was so kind of Gail, a fellow cat person, to imagine me talking to Bobo. A recent poem, a poem that just appeared in the Threepenny Review the other day. A poem since that book is made of 3 conversations with a successor cat. So I will read to you as a kind of footnote, I guess. Conversations with Max. There are 3 of them. First one, water. More to affirm again an ancient contract than out of thirst. You, with your percussive tongue, lap a trickle of water in the bathroom sink that I rinse for you when I'm done shaving. That's life. That's life, and I have had more of it than your allotment. Man has invented death, says Yeats. Quote, nor dread nor hope attend a dying animal, I chant. Not to mock you or him, but the more to honor your kind and mine, and all our predecessors, many of both dead, I have known. Have humans invented righteousness too, while we were at it? I'm not embarrassed to ask a cat. The dreadful wars of theocracy shame every invention, right down to these harmless pipes that I control. Chair. I say to you, our meeting together in this big chair is more than a habit. It's a custom. In your cat way, you understand my vocal meaning as theatrical noise. And so it is. Me acting out my nature as a talker, as you, with your elegant predator's oblique path to the chair, with forays left and right, act out your nature as an athletic hunter. I wonder, do you scorn my straight line route here to the chair as artless? The desperate hurry of quarry? No, I don't think you imagine you're simply hunting any more than I imagine we're simply having a chat as we two enact in mime our sociable time together. And the last one, paper. I tell you, move over so I can read the paper. Reading my voice and muscles, you make some room to share my lap with the screen of dread I call the paper. Quote, worse all over the world, I tell you. It even looks like paper, cleverly aping the Times or Globe, with fonts of horror I scan. The morning fish wrap, Herb Cain called his column. The pulp mills weren't very good for fish, but the screen you move aside for is toxic too. And mammals like you and I do like the feel of paper. They say we primates evolved this code of grunts for hunting in packs. And we scratched out alphabets for keeping accounts of trade in slaves or olives, profits and losses of the lost solitary hunter. I guess I think of that cat as a footnote on my quoting at the end of the previous poem, my quoting Hannah Arendt, saying when people say, oh, I'm afraid of being ashamed of being German because of the Holocaust, she says, I'm afraid of being human. And I guess that's one reason I like to talk to my cat, is that he's neither self-righteous. Well, I won't go on. And it is sociable. And the challenge of the poem was to write the poem and not be sort of condescending and cute. As I say in the poem, I'm not embarrassed to ask a cat, and I am not. I'll read a poem that, or another poem from this book that more names. It's so nice not to have to explain anything. You have all the answers in your pocket. Poem is called Forgiveness. The mind skitters. I can hear somebody saying, it sure does. The mind skitters, its one rudder being its own voice. The great fascist poet taught me free verse. Trying to concentrate on the forgiving of an unforgivable crime in a lecture by Emmanuel Levinas, I drift off into Keely Smith being a Cherokee. Quote, the desire for Verlieb, free verse, says Ezra Pound in his hectoring way, is quantity reasserting itself after years of starvation. And reading that, I got the idea. Just like in music, longer is different from higher, like with long E's. And it was called quantity. I could hear it. The third syllable longer, the first one stressed by pitch. Bitterness. Cherokee. Popinjay. I don't pretend I was thinking about the Trail of Tears or any other unforgivable crime. I was thinking about how well she imitates Louis Prima's pelvis forward walk, mocking the magic of it, while she was singing like an angel in a prom dress. And how great it would be to write something that funny and impassioned. The cadences and quantities of his exile's letter break my heart as a ritual of truth. The cadences and quantities of his exile's letter break my heart as a ritual of truth, the remote spoken ceremony of atonement. At the same time, I scorn that nostalgic celebration of drunken friendship among exquisite Asian diplomats of an ancient ruling class. Starvation of figure of speech. The airy dynamo of song animates the shadows. And speaking of shadows, who has a right to forgive? White soldiers took away the Arapaho's horses. In old Ukraine, The nationalists first mutilated some Jews, then made them dance and sing naked before killing them as a way of showing what they'd like to do to the Poles, or was it to the invading Germans? Is the point humiliation beyond forgiveness? Do the damned impregnate the enslaved to make an unforgivable point? Also to deny it? Even poor John Keats, in his letters, enjoys a little minor Jew baiting. Who do I think I am to forgive him? After all, I am him. He, too, was the child of a New Jersey optician. And please do me a favor. Don't tell me, no, he wasn't. I guess I've read for about 20 minutes. I'll read the poem Gail alluded to, where Jerry Lewis and Zelensky are there together in my poem. I'll read 2 or 3 more. Poem's called Place Name Echoes, and in the past it's always been in this book. Table of contents is a beautiful thing. Here it is on page 17. So it says, and it's true. Place Name Echoes, in memory of Adam Zagajewski. Adam, a great poet, and another one of my friends, like Ifeanyi, a poet friend of about my same age. And many people know Adam. So many great poems by him. Many people know him by his poem, Going to Kiev. I'm happy to say I published it first in this country when it was poetry in the Republic. It is a great poem. And his Kiev, the different names of that city have so many different nationalist emotions that it's a part of the world in which pronunciation and spelling can be reasons that I'm going to kill you or not. Murderous nationalistic feelings rooted in all the violations, so that for me, Adam's poem is prophetic, predictive about the city that was his city and that he was in many ways exiled from. And the basis of the poem is I grew up in New Jersey around names that I thought were just New Jersey names. I thought that they were names of my parents' friends and shopkeepers and people in the town. It turns out they were from places where there's now this horrible war of invasion happening. Place Name Echoes, in memory of Adam Zagajewski. The way a child's idea of blood is a scraped knee. I heard these as New Jersey names. Old Mr. Lyman, the Seamus, crooning the prayers under his breath all day long. Mr. Chernovitz, Manny and B. Mirapol. Hidden in the homely consonants, echoes of blood. Jerry Lewis changed from Levitch, Ukrainian for Levi. In the show, Yosel Tarnopol, a survivor, always smiling in his bad clothes, murder again exploding in Babin Yar, that is to Babi Yar, as Kiev is to Kiev. Chasms of blood in one spelled shade of pronunciation or another. The Lvov of Adam's poem is Lviv. Mr. Lemberg from Vilnius Vilna, Vilna, instrument of cousin tongues, and every tongue a fanged, familiar spirit, to expel in air the blood-stunned music of time, a spoken makeshift calm or explosion. Fate saturates names. Death awaits you, Autumn wrote, calling the city by name in the name of the earth, in all degrees of translation. Every city a Jerusalem, every person a Jew, a city contorted exhales the syllables of its name, plain as a peach, over again in each chorus of its blood. Talking. Talking. It can be a way of thinking. There are people who fear it more than flying or heights or dying. To be all talk is being less than nothing, but now you're talking is more than you were before. I like how when he takes me to the market, he talks to all the packages, Debbie said, not long before she died. He talks to lettuce. I'm talking to you now. I talk to the cat. In the frozen queue of grief at Stalin's prison, the question to Akhmatova, can you describe this? Yes, the poet answers. I can. The child's hand on her throat can feel her voice vibrate. It means to her she is there, inside. The stammerer finds relief in speaking verses because it's less like talking, more like singing. I mutter flakes of meaning. Bufara, shmegegi, blah, blah, blah. A way of thinking, a way of avoiding something. The articulated grunts of grief and rage. Even the Iliad yaks. The baby rehearses melodies of speech, the tunes of chat, of menace. Vocal without words, Morricone's music speaks for the iron faces of ugly cowboys. Does her legendary "Yes, I Can" exceed Akhmatova's Requiem itself? It is all one meaning. Now you are really saying something. Yes, and can you? Long before Stalin, long before everything, her new lungs already learning to breathe, her tongue already studying its mission. I'll read one more poem to you. I can't remember if we do questions or not.
We do.
I like questions. So I'll read one fairly short poem to you, and then we invite questions and kind remarks. I'll read the poem I chose to put first. Here's Friendship again. At the suggestion of another dear friend, Louise Glick, I made this the first poem in my collected poems. She pointed out to me that there was no law where I had to preserve original orders parts. She said, you can do it if you want. The poem is called Rhyme. And in its own way, it does rhyme. Though you might be thinking, no, it doesn't. It does so. Rhyme. Air, an instrument of the tongue. The tongue, an instrument of the body. The body, an instrument of spirit. The spirit of being of the air. Each bird the medium of its song. Each song a world, a containment, like a hotel room, ready for us guests who inherit our compartment of time there. In the Joseph Cornell box, among ephemera as its element, the preserved bird, a study in spontaneous elegy, the parrot, art, mortal in its cornered sphere. Each room a stanza rung in a laddered filament, clambered by all us unsteady chambered voices that share it, each reciting, I too was here. I too was here in a room, a rhyme, a song, in the box, in books, each element an instrument, the body still straining to parrot the spirit, a being of air. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pinsky. I have two very different questions. I'll try to be very brief.
Thank you.
Question one, in the poem that you read, you mentioned Latin atrocities.
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder if you can say something or comment on Nelly Sachs' poems. For example, she was a German.
Yeah, I'm aware of Nelly Sachs. Yes.
She was helped by a Swedish friend to live in exile in Sweden.
Yes. Yes.
Say something about that.
Most of the poets, many poets around the world can write about atrocity, murder, mass murder from direct experience. Without being melodramatic, I can say that I have an extraordinarily fortunate life. Even among middle-class Americans, I've been almost inexplicably blessed. I feel slightly superstitious saying it. That may be part of my habit of changing the subject in my poems. I made a little would-be self-deprecating joke when the first line of the poem was, "The mind skitters." And my focus has to be multifocal. I don't have an obsession that was forced on me. And we all do, really. But comparatively, compared to Nelly Sachs, compared to any number of poets, I can choose. I have the luxury and the chore and the onus of choosing what I'm going to write about. And so I honor that tradition very much. I am more in an American tradition like Walt Whitman or Emily Dickinson. Many cursed in our country, many curses. I don't want to be saccharine about the United States, but I'm aware of the good fortune so that I can allude to the Holocaust and enjoy sort of indulging as though I were a son of the Borscht Belt and make Jewish joke, quote a Jewish joke that I adore about where speaking is the punchline. I'm aware that's a luxury, and then I try to live up to the luxury. Second question.
Right. It's a different question, but you mentioned the Yeats a couple of times, but
Yes.
to us, Yeats seems to be one of the distant past. I'll be interested to know your impression or memories of contemporary poets. I mentioned too that you knew who you knew and who are no longer around. James Heaney and Derek Walcott. I met both, but I only have
Yeah,
genuine
the
friends.
question, the second question from the gentleman, the first question, for those who didn't hear it, the first question had to do with Nelly Sachs writing about atrocity and Holocaust. Maybe that helps explain my answer. The second question is the allusions to Yeats and question about allusions to contemporary poets. I've already said that I allude to Ifeanyi Menkidu in one poem. I'm sure I do that other times. Derek Walcott was a colleague, and we had friendly relations. His work was not important to me the way that Seamus's work and Seamus's friendship was very important to me. That's just on the level of gossip, but since you ask, I won't refrain from the gossip. And Seamus would be on the list for me, along with Charles C.K. Williams, Louise Gluck. There are a lot of my contemporaries who have died. As I say to the cat, I can remember lots of dead cats and dogs I've known. And increasingly, when you get to my age, you're going to leave somebody else out when you try to make a list of friends and poets who have passed, you know. Well, we have a good example of two good questions. The honor of the Grolier is now at stake. Will there be another one?
I have one. It's not really a question. I'm wondering, maybe to finish off the night, would you read that Bonnie poem for us?
Which poem?
Will you read country music for us?
Sure, good idea.
Okay.
My right leg is not okay.
Want to sit down?
No, I'm fine. It's just the leg needs to be amputated. Because I was in one position for a long time, and as happens, I falsely accused a gentleman back there. The leg did fall asleep. But it's as alert as it can be right now. I have a good friend, another very distinguished person, but in a different field. He is a poetry buff. The country music musician Pat Alger had written a lot of Patricia Yearwood hits. He's very eminent in this field. He teaches it. He's a collector of others, Robert Frost. He's made extraordinary presents to me of some Frost. When Pat Alger, who is a poetry reader, saw that I had a poem named Country Music. It's in the book, isn't it? Pat got very interested. And then, of course, being a very smart man, he got the joke and he tells me he did laugh at it. So here's a poem called Country Music. It's quite short, and I'm looking at it now to see. I think I have to read another short poem. I will read two poems to finish. I will read Country Music, in which Ifeanyi is named, and then I'll read another poem that is, it's the last poem of the book, very much associated with Igbo culture and with Ifeanyi's writing in prose and verse. I'll just read them and stop yakking. Country Music. Ifeanyi says in his country, a baby is it until it learns to be one of us. I am in my Igbo second childhood. The quarrel, a glacier, my lungs. The weather, the world, the book review. Lyrical bitching, biblical plaint. Infant debt of attention, vetting the news, the noise, the needs for keeps. It is the world's beginnings, my own endings, and having the heart to tell them apart. And finally, I will close with a poem, the last poem in this book, called At the Sangoma. The Sangoma, I associate it more with Zulu culture, but the Sangoma is a sort of helps you communicate with the ancestors. The ancestors speak through the Sangoma. At the Sangoma, I ask the ancestors about my suffering. You cannot understand it. You were born to too much of the possible. If I was born free, then what are you to me? You were not born free. To be born free, they said, would be not to be born. I asked the ancestors about their suffering. Because it was yours, now it is yours, as the shape of your head is yours. So I asked the ancestor about the children. Is it their suffering too? That is your problem, they said. Honor it or not. Nice.
Thank you, Boyd. Thank you, Gail, for the amazing introductions. Thank you, Robert, for a wonderful reading. Let's give Robert another round. Thank you all for attending the reading. We have books for sale over here. Robert will be signing books. If everyone could please leave your chairs up against one of the walls, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Thank you.
I can't help to show.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that is.
After my
Is that a purebred cat? It is, I don't know the English, but it's some British. Yeah.